What if the legendary CAT 3208 was engineered with a fatal flaw? Why did veteran mechanics warn you against trusting its bulletproof reputation? This engine delivered unmatched torque, but behind its steel-strong image lie cast-iron cracks, surprise failures, and service costs so staggering they bankrupted fleets. Today we're uncovering the design shortcuts, warranty cover-ups, and buried maintenance nightmares that Caterpillar never wanted you to know. So stay close, because the full story of the 3208 is darker than its toughest critics ever imagined. Did you know the CAT 3208 was once labeled a throwaway engine? At first glance, it might sound like an insult to its design or durability, but the truth behind the label stems from how it was intended to be used. The 3208 was introduced in the 1970s as a lightweight, high-speed diesel engine to fit into specific markets. It was designed primarily for limited lifespan applications, like medium-duty trucks, buses, and marine vessels. In these fields, engines were typically not expected to last forever, especially when considering the economic realities of replacing versus rebuilding. CAT positioned the 3208 to provide dependable service for a specific period, after which it was often deemed more practical to replace the engine entirely rather than invest in costly rebuilds. That's where the nickname throwaway started to stick. But there's more to it than just the intended use. A large part of the throwaway reputation came from engine construction choices. Unlike some of its contemporaries, the CAT 3208 was built without replaceable cylinder liners. This made overhauls slightly more complicated than with liner-equipped engines like the Cummins 6BT. With the 3208, once cylinders underwent significant wear, the block often required specialized machining to restore it for reuse, a process that many businesses and mechanics found time-intensive and expensive. For equipment operators running tight schedules, swapping in a brand-new engine was often faster, creating the perception that rebuilding wasn't practical or even possible for the 3208. This reputation spread far and wide over the years, overshadowing the engine's actual capabilities. The 6BT Cummins establishes an interesting point of comparison. While the CAT 3208 was viewed as something to replace when worn out, the Cummins 6BT earned a reputation as one of the most rebuildable mechanical diesels in history. Part of its appeal lies in its sturdy inline-six design and the inclusion of wet liners, which allow easy cylinder bore repair without complicated machining. Components are widely available, and its overhaul process is seen as intuitive, making it popular among mechanics and vehicle owners alike. By comparison, many 3208 rebuilders report spending extra time sourcing parts and adapting to the quirks of its V8 layout. But two completely different design strategies yielded these contrasting reputations. And while the Cummins may have the edge in rebuild simplicity, it doesn't mean the 3208 should be written off too quickly. So if the CAT 3208 is rebuildable, why has this throwaway myth persisted for so long? The answer isn't just about the engine itself. It's about perception. Those perceiving the 3208 as uneconomical often focus on industries where rapid replacement is practical. Replacing engines on schedule minimizes downtime in fleets or minimizes risk for marine operators. This, in turn, cemented the throwaway mindset. For a while, it also didn't help that CAT themselves leaned into this narrative, prioritizing their newer engines instead of encouraging users to rebuild their 3208s. It put the focus on new engine sales over the longevity of older ones. Here's the reality. While the CAT 3208 can absolutely be rebuilt, its design quirks make it far less attractive for overhauls compared to other diesel workhorses like the 3208 Cummins 6BT. Whether it's the machining challenges, higher parts costs, or the need for expertise in such a specific engine, the perception of it being disposable continues. And yet, in the hands of determined owners, the 3208 proves itself over time. It offers a lesson in durability versus convenience. But this reputation for being impractical to rebuild is only part of the story. The 3208's construction didn't just hinder its perception, it directly impacted another critical aspect: serviceability. Let's explore why even basic maintenance tasks could turn into a logistical nightmare for CAT 3208 owners. What if a simple maintenance task turned into hours of frustration? For many CAT 3208 owners, this isn't a hypothetical question. It's the reality they face every time they open the hood. If you've dealt with the poorly placed raw water pump, you know exactly what this means. The pump's location makes something as routine as an impeller change a downright hassle. To replace the impeller, the entire water pump has to come off, requiring removal of nearby components just to access it. One frustrated owner on trawler forum didn't mince words, calling it a dumb design. And they're not wrong. This kind of setup doesn't just waste your time, it actively discourages routine maintenance, which can lead to bigger problems down the line. But the water pump placement isn't the only headache. The Cat 3208's cooling system design adds another layer of complication. Instead of keeping things simple, the engine relies on a tangle of external cooling hoses, particularly on the outboard sides of the V8 block. These hoses aren't just hard to reach, they also increase the chances of leaks over time, forcing owners to constantly monitor and adjust them. Servicing these hoses often requires contorting into awkward positions or even removing other components to gain access, wasting valuable time. Now compare this to something like the 6BT Cummins. Its inline-6 design avoids this complexity altogether, with straightforward cooling systems that are easier to service. With fewer external hoses to deal with, a Cummins owner could be back up and running in a fraction of the time it takes for someone working on a Cat 3208. And then there's the belt-driven water pump. For many engines, a belt failure might inconvenience you, but it wouldn't necessarily spell disaster. Unfortunately, that's not the case for the Cat 3208. If the belt driving the water pump fails, cooling stops immediately, leading to rapid overheating. For a diesel engine like the 3208, overheating can escalate quickly into catastrophic damage. This flaw isn't just frustrating, it raises the stakes dramatically. Owners know that one missed belt inspection or delayed replacement could cost them thousands. Again, this contrasts with certain other engines where belt failures are less critical because alternate cooling methods or redundancy mechanisms exist. These serviceability struggles aren't just inconvenient, they can lead to increased downtime and higher maintenance costs over the engine's lifespan. On forums like Trawler Forum, owners frequently share stories of how difficult these repairs can be and how much time they lose trying to keep their 3208s running smoothly. For people who rely on these engines for work or travel, every hour spent battling a water pump or a tangle of hoses is an hour they aren't moving forward, and that starts to add up. Whether it's the challenge of finding parts or the labor cost for repairs, it's a consistent frustration for many 3208 users. Comparatively, owners of the 6BT Cummins or other engines with more user-friendly designs rarely encounter these same issues. Simpler layouts mean less downtime, and fewer surprises lurking under the hood translate to lower repair bills. The struggles aren't just hypothetical either. Imagine this scenario. You're maintaining a 3208 in a marine application, where access to tools and spare parts might already be limited. A faulty water pump impeller or a bad cooling hose means hours spent dismantling components in a cramped engine bay, all while knowing that every delay increases the risk of further damage. Contrast this with a 6BT Cummins owner with a similar issue. They may need to swap a part too, but their straightforward engine design allows them to do so quickly, minimizing both effort and overall downtime. It's a stark difference, and it's why serviceability often becomes the breaking point for 3,208 owners who've had enough. These design choices were no doubt shaped by CAT's priorities at the time. The Cat 3208 relies on pencil injectors, which are prone to degradation after years of use. When these injectors wear down, they spray fuel less efficiently, making combustion even harder to achieve. Replacing or servicing injectors can help alleviate some of the smoking issues, but again, it doesn't solve the root design flaws causing them. All of this points to a larger issue. The Cat 3208 was never designed to excel in idle-heavy applications or situations where sustained low loads were common. It thrives most when it's pushed hard, delivering the high power it was built for. That's not to say it can't operate well in other circumstances. It's just that owners need to be extra vigilant about maintenance and operational habits to keep these smoking issues under control. Even with proactive care, however, these problems highlight deeper flaws in the 3208's architecture. The two-ring piston design, combined with the compression ratio and reliance on pencil injectors, means the problems are hardwired into the engine. While there are workarounds like avoiding idling or upgrading pistons, these solutions don't erase the fact that the 3208 lags behind competitors like the 6BT Cummins in terms of reliability and efficiency. And the truth is, these performance issues are part of a broader pattern of limitations linked to the engine's design. Ultimately, the smoking and wet stacking issues stem from decisions made in the engine's original configuration. But these are far from the only design choices that have hampered the CAT 3208's long-term reputation. From cooling systems to alternator compatibility, its foundational architecture has contributed to a reputation that's as frustrating as it is complicated. Let's dig deeper into how these seemingly small design decisions added up to massive challenges for 3208 owners. The CAT 3208 relies on an intricate network of external cooling hoses, particularly located on the outboard sides of its V8 block. While the design achieved the compact layout necessary for its application, it came at a cost. These hoses are difficult to reach, requiring significant disassembly of surrounding components just to access and service them. To make matters worse, as engines age, these external hoses become prone to leaks or cracks due to wear and tear. Repairs on this system often involve hours of work just to find and replace faulty hoses, time that could otherwise be spent keeping the engine running under load. One frustrated 3208 owner described this setup on a marine forum as unnecessarily overcomplicated, noting how cramped engine bays only made things worse. Contrast this with the Cummins 6BT, which uses a less complex, more accessible cooling system. The 6BT's simplicity not only makes maintenance faster, but also reduces the likelihood of overlooked issues that can snowball into expensive failures. If that wasn't enough, the CAT 3208's cooling system also includes a belt-driven water pump, which adds another layer of vulnerability. In the event of a belt failure, the cooling system immediately stops functioning. Diesel engines like the 3208 are especially sensitive to overheating, and even a brief interruption in cooling can cause permanent damage. For mechanics or operators, this means paying close attention to belt wear and replacing it far more frequently than might seem necessary just to avoid a costly failure. Again, this issue looks even worse when compared to engines with more robust or redundant cooling designs, where a single point of failure isn't as likely to bring everything to a halt. The problems don't stop with cooling. The CAT 3208 stock configuration also limits its ability to accommodate modern high-output alternators. Applications with higher electrical demands, whether in marine systems, construction equipment, or over-the-road vehicles, often rely on alternators delivering more than 100 amps. But for many 3208 owners, installing anything beyond the factory OEM alternator requires significant workarounds, and for some, it's downright impossible. As one trawler forum user remarked, this limitation makes the engine far less versatile for applications requiring modern electrical systems. In contrast, the Cummins 6BT not only supports high-output alternators, but does so with minimal modification. This adaptability has helped the 6BT remain practical for modern use, while the 3208 struggles to keep up with changing demands. It's important to consider whether these design flaws were inevitable or avoidable. Looking at the era in which the 3208 was developed, it becomes clear that CAT's priorities leaned heavily toward creating a lightweight, high-powered diesel engine to serve its niche markets. The focus on compactness and power density led to some shortcuts, especially when it came to ease of maintenance and adaptability. At the time, this may have seemed like a reasonable trade-off. After all, the 3208 was targeted for applications like trucks or marine vessels, where power output often outweighed serviceability concerns. But over time, as the market shifted toward engines that could stay in service longer and adapt to modern systems, the 3208 fell behind. Engines like the Cummins 6BT succeeded because they avoided these compromises. Their designs put simplicity and adaptability at the forefront, which led to long-term reliability and lower costs for owners. For the CAT 3208, however, design flaws like the cooling system, water pump placement, and alternator limitations turned into obstacles that prevented it from evolving with the times. These flaws didn't just frustrate owners, they cemented the 3208 as an engine built for its time, but not for the future. So while the 3208 has its strengths, including solid power output when maintained properly, its design limitations hold it back in ways that engines like the 6BT Cummins simply don't. But the story of the 3208 isn't just about one engine's shortcomings, it's also a look into the choices manufacturers make when creating workhorse diesels. With that in mind, let's step back and reflect on what the CAT 3208 teaches us about mechanical diesel engines as a whole. The CAT 3208's legacy is a story of contrasts, Branded as a throwaway engine from the start, it still managed to exceed expectations with rebuildability that many didn't anticipate. Yet its flaws, complex serviceability, smoking issues, and design restrictions shaped how it's remembered. Owners often debated its value, with some calling it reliable and others finding it frustrating. This complexity reveals an enduring lesson. Reputations can mask deeper truths. Whether you're maintaining one or simply fascinated by engine history, the 3208 offers insight into how design decisions echo over time. Subscribe to explore more engines that defined eras and rewritten their narratives.